So a very good morning to everybody. This is Amrita Ganguly from Corporate Communication. Today we are celebrating the 116th birth anniversary of Mr. JRD Tata, as you all know. And it's an absolute pleasure to initiate the first WebEx for the day. This session is called Saluting a Legend, and we look forward to hearing from Mr. T. Doongaji, who's our guest for today. I would like to request Mr. Sudhanshu Pathak, Vice President Steel Manufacturing and our Chairman for the Ethics Committee of Tata Steel, to please introduce our speaker. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Amrita. Mr. Doongaji, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So 29th July is a day which not only the employees of Tata Steel look forward to, but the entire Tata Group. There is a great deal of energy, enthusiasm in the various events and celebrations organized, be it related to ethics, quality, or human resources. For the young aero enthusiasts of Jamshedpur, it is also a day where they get to see from close quarters the various aircrafts on display at the Sonari Airport. 29th July is the birth anniversary of JRD Tata. This year is JRD Tata's 116th birth anniversary, and the first one we celebrated entirely on a digital platform. The theme for this year's JRD's birth anniversary celebrates various dimensions of JRD Tata being an advocate of self-reliance, a pioneer aviator, numero industrialist, institution builder, and a man manager par excellence. JRD was a nation builder who was and continues to be a source of inspiration to both young and old. As an industrialist, JRD is credited with placing the Tata Group on the international map. He has been a global benchmark to his integrity, ethics, and social concern. But it is as an inspirer of men that JRD will always be remembered. To celebrate JRD Tata as a personality and doyen of Indian industry in the 20th century, we felt it would be appropriate to invite and listen to a person who has worked very closely with JRD Tata and has a close insight of him as a person. His values and principles of managing a large business enterprise, it is a privilege to have Mr. R Doongaji amongst us to share his thought in a presentation saluting a legend. Having joined Tata Steel in 1966, Mr. Doongaji has been associated with the group for 50 years. During his tenure, he has served as the Managing Director and Joint Managing Director of Tata Companies. Since retiring in 2008, his association with Tata continues in areas of leadership development and propagating the group's unique corporate culture. Mr. Doongaji also serves as honorary advisor to the Tata Central Archives, Pune. During his career at Tata, he worked with industry stalwarts such as JRD Tata, Sumant Mulgaonkar, Rusi Modi, and S.A. Sabawala. A qualified external examiner for the Tata Business Excellence Model and a black belt in Six Sigma Learning, Mr. Doongaji has served as an independent director on the boards of companies, prominent among them being Container Corporation of India, Forbes and Company Limited, and the Associated Building Company Limited, a Tata Group company. A professional speaker, he has addressed over 30,000 persons on management-related and other subjects at venues in India and abroad. A gold medalist, J.N. Tata Scholar, an alumnus of Jabalpur and Berkeley universities, he believes that management is a spiritual concept, subscribing as he does to what he calls the 3 P's of management, that is credibility, culture, and communication. Recipient of Yuva Ratna Award 1992 for contribution to industry, Mr. Doongaji is also the first recipient of the Ethics in Business Awards 2006 from the International Association of Human Values, Brussels. Ladies and gentlemen, over to Mr. Doongaji.
Thank you, Sudhanshu sir. Mr. Doongaji, over to you, please. You can share your screen as well.
Thank you very much. At the outset, let me say good morning, family, because body and soul, I'm Tata Steel. But let me tell you that I'm very grateful to Kulwin Suri, Amrita, and Vipin, who have organized the event. And therefore, it's a great pleasure to be here this morning. I said family for the reason that 34 out of my 42 active years were Tata Steel. I was recruited in 1966 by none other than Rusi Modi to what he called MAS, the Modi Administration Service. Whenever Kulwin invites me or others invite me to Jamshedpur, the feeling is of Ghar Vapsi. Because Jamshedpur, for me, is nothing short of Kedarnath and Badrinath. My friends jokingly often ask me, are you sure blood is flowing through your veins or is it hot metal from Jamshedpur? Having said that, I've had the good fortune of working for JRD Tata, and in today's presentation, I'll take you through maybe just 7 or 8 facets of his personality which are worth knowing. Before I do that, I want to tell you how we used to celebrate that birthday when he was around, physically around. That is, he's still around, but physically around. What we used to do that he loved yellow roses, and every year we added 1 rose and took a bouquet to his house and gave it to him, or in office if it was a working day. I remember carrying his 87th birthday bouquet, which had 87 yellow roses. May I request you to mentally today present him a bouquet of 116 yellow roses. He would have really loved that, and I'm sure he's watching over us as I speak. So that's the bouquet that we can present him, and a few flowers from that bouquet is what I'm going to present to you about him today and about his unique qualities that I was, shall I say, fortunate to observe. So let me begin the presentation. Can you see it? I need a little feedback on
it. Not yet, sir. We'll wait for it.
Okay. No, I think I should have pressed share and then done it.
Right, sir.
Do you have it now?
Vipin, can you just cross-check? We have done the trial.
Can you see? Do you have the presentation now?
No, sir. You need to share the content.
I did that. I first clicked share. And then I clicked, yeah, 1 second. Now you might get it. Is it there with you?
Yes, sir. It's coming.
Yeah, it's visible now.
Yeah, but you have it in the, yeah. Okay. I've got a little patch here with Amrita Ganguly on the right side. I suppose that's something I cannot avoid, is it?
Not visible to us, so you can proceed.
I have it on my screen with you. Doesn't matter. You can see the screen, so it's okay. I've called it Saluting a Legend because he was a legend, and the least we can do is to salute a man of his stature. So let me begin by sharing with you a little picture, which is my favorite. And you will find below the date of birth, July 29, 1994. And there are just a few dots. I have not taken it to 29th November, I think 1993 when he passed away, because there is no end to a personality like this. He is still amongst us. And I observed him so closely. There are so many books on leadership by eminent authors, but observing him, I came to my own definition of leadership, which is a single one-liner. And that is, leadership has to be felt. It need not be seen. I'll repeat that. Leadership has to be felt. It need not be seen. JRD Tata is felt not only in India, all over the world as one of the greats of the corporate world. So he is still there, and real leaders don't need their physical form to be experienced or to be around us. So leadership has to be felt. It need not be seen. So therefore, I didn't write the death of his passing because that's not relevant in my mind. I'll sum up his personality by a quote from Economic Times when he passed the baton to Ratan Tata in 1991. I think it gives you a fair view of the person. He says, under JRD's leadership, the group has earned a special place in India's corporate life. Throughout, the emphasis has been on building solid businesses and not on seeking quick returns, capitalizing on shortages or manipulating government policy to personal advantage. This group culture should hold it in good stead in the future as well. I mean, if you were to ponder over this, you will find that it is all about India. It is all about ethical standards, and it is not about selfishness or personal gain. And therefore, I thought I'll begin with this. Now, let's look at the 7 or 8 traits that I thought I'll share with you. The first, and of course most important, is credibility. He was the most credible, trusted leader of the corporate world and is still remembered for his ethical standards. So, I like to begin this with a small cartoon. Here is a guy telling his boss, morally speaking, sir, we are at fault. Legally, we can wriggle out of it, but as a business strategy, it was perfect. JRD ensured that we did nothing which was morally questionable or something that we could manipulate the law for, gaining something for ourselves through the manipulation of the law. We have to remember that JRD was the head of Tata's in a controlled economy. Controlled is, I think, a mild word, in a stifling economy, where the private sector was not allowed to grow at all. And in spite of that, in 1938, he inherited 14 companies. And when he passed the baton to Ratan in 1991, we were a group of 90 companies. Revenues increased under his leadership from 10,000 crores to 34,000 crores in this period of time in a shackled economy. So it is possible to ethically grow. You require patience, and that's what he proved. And that's why many years ago he said, we all feel a certain pride that we are somewhat different from others. This factor has also worked against our growth. What would have happened if our philosophy was like that of some other companies, which do not stop at any means to attain their ends? I've often thought of that, and I've come to the conclusion that if we were like other groups, we would be twice as big as they are today. What we have sacrificed is 100% growth, but we wouldn't want it any other way. This sums up his approach to what is right and what is wrong. So you can see he really did not think of material gain in a wrong way. And today we are the only Indian multinational having grown in spite of those drawbacks, but always following the path of what is true under his leadership and what is ethical under his leadership. And this is what binds the whole group together. So he says, if someone were to ask me what holds the Tata companies together, more than anything else, I would say it is our shared ideas and values which we inherited from Jamsetji Tata. I want to tell you quickly 3 little stories, and I will be as quick as I can. JRD had a Chrysler car in the 60s. It was a fantastic looking car. I still remember that car. And he had the habit of giving lifts to people. So one day on a Sunday, he was driving the car himself at Marine Drive, and he saw one gentleman and 2 ladies at the bus stop. I forget their names. He was not some ordinary person, but I forget his name. So he stopped the car there and said, can I take you anywhere that you want? I'm going the same way. So the gentleman knew JRD, but the ladies didn't. So they got into the car, the gentleman in front and the ladies at the back. And as they moved on the road on Marine Drive, this gentleman turned back and said, do you know in whose car we are going? So they sort of didn't know. So he said, you know, this is JRD Tata's car. JRD immediately clarified. He said, ladies, this is not JRD Tata's car. This car belongs to the Tata Iron and Steel Company. He wanted to be that particular. He wanted to tell them that this is not my car. He could have easily not answered that question. Paying income tax on the sale of flat. Amrita had actually printed this little story of mine last year. He had sold a flat on which he had made some money. And it was capital gains, and he knew that he would have to pay tax. So he looked for Nani Palkewala, another great prophet, stable as such. And Nani was not available, so I was asked to get the next best, which was Dinesh Bhai, who died recently. Dinesh Vyas was his name, and he was known as Chota Palkewala. He was that good. So I requested Dinesh Bhai. Dinesh was very excited. He came and he thought, JRD Tata seeking my advice. That boosted his ego a lot. And I took him to JRD. And he looked at the numbers and told JRD, it must have been August, September, and that was the rule at that time, that, you know, you can keep your capital gains till 31st March. And this is the tax you'll have to pay on 31st March or before 31st March. That way you could earn some money by investing it somewhere. And then, of course, you can pay the tax before the due date. JRD grimaced. He didn't look very happy with the advice. So Dinesh Bhai said, but he realized that JRD was not particularly impressed. So JRD, he said, sir, let me tell you, this is perfectly right, perfectly legal. So JRD said, Dinesh, I don't want to know whether it is legal or illegal. Just tell me if it is right or wrong. He said, if I was to pay this tax today, however small the amount in compared to what the government collects, don't you think it would help the country to have that money quickly? Dinesh Bhai didn't know what to answer. And as he came out of the room with me, he said, never call me to advise this man. He thinks so differently. Anybody else would have appreciated my advice. For him, and he did pay that tax early. I think the income tax office in Bombay might have that letter, but you know how government records are. I failed to get a copy of that. Cricket. I was chairman Tata Cricket for 30 years, and quite a few celebrity cricketers joined in my time. And there was this one celebrity cricketer, I don't want to mention his name. We were playing a prestigious tournament. He was leading Tatas, and he did not like a decision made by the umpire. They were giving the opposite side another celebrity batsman not out. So he just took his entire team. I mean, the Tata 11 was asked to walk back to the pavilion, which is not done. JRD came to know of it, and he was furious and livid. And he called Milind Rege, who was administrator and a dear friend of mine, great captain Bombay in spite of heart attack. And Milind, what he did was, he was summoned by JRD and he knew what was going to come. So JRD said, if you cannot manage cricket the way Tatas play the game, whether it be business or sports, I'll have to look for somebody else to administer the game. And he didn't stop there. He drafted a letter. He's drafting the letter for the chairman of the managing committee of the sports club, which was Kulkarni, was company secretary of Telco at that time. And he said, you issue this letter to each and every player, which said that if you ever behave like this again, you will lose your job. So he wanted to ensure that whether it was business or sport, he won or lost fairly and honorably. Yes, this is not a Tata quote, but I like it very much and it sums up what he believed in. It says, we have retained the fire of idealism, and in its glow we have come to recognize that no wealth or power can be more valuable than our dignity. No loss of profit can be more critical than the loss of credibility. No skills or qualification can substitute the integrity of our character. So, ladies and gentlemen, dignity, credibility, and character is what JRD Tata emphasized. We want to pay tribute to him. We need to lead our professional and personal lives with dignity, credibility, and character. The second one, humility. He was a humble person, and I'll take you through one or two of the instances. I think humility and greatness go hand in hand. As you know, he received the Bharat Ratna in 1992. Here's a picture of President Venkat Narayan presenting the Bharat Ratna to JRD Tata. And for you to see, I have got the Bharat Ratna for you on the screen. We have the original with us in our archives in Pune. And when he received this award, Ratan Tata announced, before the announcement of the honor, he was told by the Prime Minister, which was Narasimha Rao then, that he's going to make an announcement. And he phoned up JRD, and the first response of JRD was, "Good Lord, why me? What have I done which is so special?" Yes, I did start the airlines. I did manage companies, increase their production. But so what? Why should I be given that award? He didn't want the award. He said he was doing his duty to his country, the people he loved for. And then he asked Ratan, can you not do something to stop government from making that announcement? Just imagine how many people would like to return the Bharat Ratna. Then JRD was told by Ratan Tata, sir, think about the thousands of people who have passed through the portals and corridors of Tata companies. On their behalf, I would request you to accept that honor. So he has accepted that honor on our behalf. We can all claim maybe 1/100th of a gram of that award for ourselves, because that is JRD Tata's way of having accepted that award, which really involves all his people. Obviously, to receive that award, he needed an Indian Jodhpuri suit. So he walked into the Lord and Taylor shop, which is a famous shop in those days at Marine Drive. And everybody who was there buying material or having something tailored, and all the salespeople they had standing behind counters, all of them just stopped doing what they were doing because they just were looking at JRD. JRD had never been into that shop. And the honor had not yet been announced. So he said, "What are you doing, ladies and gentlemen? I have not escaped from the zoo. Please continue what you are doing. I just need to have an Indian suit tailored for a particular event." He didn't tell them, but the event was the receiving of the Bharat Ratna. He didn't even mention it. The practice he followed, and I was a part of that office, not a single letter written by anyone, small, insignificant, big, whosoever, remained unacknowledged. Every letter had to be acknowledged within 48 hours. It had to have some meaning. Sometimes we said it's being forwarded to Tisco or Telco, and you will be hearing from them. Letter going from the chairman's office, everybody heard from everybody. So his practice was never leave anything unacknowledged. I don't know why people today don't respect it. In those days, not a single letter remained unacknowledged. And if he was traveling, we had to acknowledge that letter in 48 hours, or teleprinters in those days, and tell him that the chairman is traveling as of now. It will be placed before him as soon as he returns. So never was anyone left guessing for a reply to his letter if it was addressed to JRD. Cancelling an appointment. I remember a very junior officer having been given an appointment at his request to meet the chairman. However, it so happened that the chairman had to travel the very day of the appointment, and when he saw the appointments of that day, on the previous day, which he reviewed always before leaving, he was more worried about this particular appointment. He said, "Now what do we do? What do I do?" I said, "Sir, don't worry. I'll inform him and we'll give him another date." He said, "No, you cannot inform him. It's me. I am the one who's unable to keep the appointment. So I would like to speak with him." Now imagine the conversation. I couldn't hear everything from the other side, but the conversation proceeded like this. He phoned up that person. The secretary connected it to him. And he said, "I'm so sorry. I must apologize. I'm unable to keep this appointment." That fellow didn't know what to hit him, because a person of JRD Tata apologizing for not being able to keep an appointment. You can imagine what it must have done to him. So he said, "Can we meet some other time?" So he said, "Sir," I'm imagining what he said. He said, "Sir, any time that suits you." He said, "No. You tell me what is a suitable day and time convenient to you. I am the one cancelling the appointment. So the choice is yours. You decide when you would like to meet me. That poor guy didn't know, and he felt immensely embarrassed. And it went on between the two of them for a couple of minutes. He said, okay, in that case, I'll tell Marion Hogwood was the secretary, to give you another time convenient to you at the earliest. Imagine JRD Tata's level of humility. This is a well-known story, taking a photograph with the Jamshedpur driver. One of our drivers in Tata Steel wanted a picture with JRD Tata. And JRD was told about it. Now, JRD always sat at the back, and so he never saw the face of the driver. He wore that cap, and he didn't know who the driver was. So on one of his trips, he told someone that, you know, as soon as I land there, you just stand next to the driver, and I will look for you, and you just point out to me that this is the driver, because there would be so many drivers for other seniors. That was done. And after shaking hands with the MD or whoever was there to receive him, he went straight to that driver. And he said, may I have a picture with you? You work with me. That fellow didn't know what it is. he was almost in tears. He took off his cap, held it under his arm, and they moved everybody aside, and a picture was taken. But it didn't stop there. JRD Tata told the PR at that time that you please send this picture of a proper size, must be 8 by 10 or something, and it was sent to Bombay. At Bombay, he sent it to Kimmel, the most expensive framers in Bombay, and he said, you first put a mount and send it back to me. So the mount was received in his office. He wrote the driver's name and signed, and then it was sent back to the framer. The frame came back, one of the finest frames that I had seen. And it was sent to Jamshedpur with specific instructions that it should not be given to the driver in the office. Somebody in the evening, when the family is having dinner, it should be taken to his house and presented to him, so that the whole family feels honored that a picture with JRD Tata has been sent to the family's residence. Think about that. If he requested a driver for duty on a Sunday, it started with a great apology to the driver. The driver said, sir, kabhi bhi bulaiye. He said, no, this is your day with your family. I'm so sorry, I need you. I'll release you as soon as I can. Lucy Lala, his biographer, had this to say about his humility, and it's a sentence that I like very much. He said he touched power but remained untouched by it. I like this line of Galvin, Motorola. Motorola was a great name when Galvin was the boss of Motorola for almost 40 years. He said, humility is not to think less of oneself, it is to think of oneself less. JRD Tata thought of humility. I mean, he thought of himself less, and that's why he was such a humble person. Adventure, guts, and determination. This is the third attribute that I like to share with you. As you know, he was the first licensed pilot of India. I'm presenting to you the picture of his original license that we have in our possession in Pune. You can see the red box, number 1, the first licensed pilot in India. He started the civil aviation service by flying the plane or mail from Karachi in those days via Ahmedabad to Bombay. And he was good. What Ratan Tata liked about JRD's time was that he used to fly or learn flying with helmets on. It was a helmet flying. You didn't have electronics or any real gadgets in the aircraft. It took 7 hours for that mail to travel from Karachi to Ahmedabad and Ahmedabad to Bombay. And you won't believe this, when it landed at Ahmedabad, it had to be refueled. And I think it was Burma Shell. 10 liters of petrol was brought on a bullock cart and poured into that aircraft. So it required guts to fly in those days. You can see, I'm going to be a little personal here. I'm putting the cursor there. You can see the waistline of JRD Tata when he was 28 years old. He was fitness conscious. I don't have the time to tell you what that meant, but he could ski at the age of 65, and skiing is not a simple one. His golden jubilee, 50 years later of this flight, JRD had suffered a heart attack or some heart condition. And in those days, no angiography, no angioplasty, no bypass surgery. All that you did was to lie in bed. But he wanted to enact that flight on the same day, irrespective of that condition which he had suffered from just about a month ago. The doctor told him, sir, you can't take that risk. It's very dangerous for you. Those compasses, you will be under some kind of stress, and I cannot allow you to. Argued so much with the doctor that the doctor realized that during those arguments, his ECG, blood pressure, pulse rate, everything would fluctuate. So he realized and said, I realized that if this person was allowed to fly, he could die. And if this person was not allowed to fly, he could die. He argued so much. So it was left at that, and JRD, in spite of that warning, flew on 15th of October 1982. Here's a picture of that. And to our good fortune, he lived for 11 years there. So when we asked JRD, why did you have to do that, sir? He said, I wanted to inspire the young generation. There is so much, shall I say, disappointment, hurt, and the way youngsters are placed in today's world. That was 82. And I think I needed something to do. I needed to do something which would be a cause of inspiration for all generations. And he really flew, as I said, in spite of that attack. The Pacific Asia Travel Association honored him by placing a plaque, which I'm going to show you, after his posthumously. And it says, Mr. JRD Tata, chairman of Tata Sons and founder of Tata Airlines, for his legendary accomplishments, for his legendary accomplishments. And then it goes on to say, pioneering civil air transport in India, expanding the Indian industrial base, initiating partnerships between labor and management, exhibiting leadership in social and economic issues, and most importantly, symbolizing the spirit of adventure and daring to the citizens of the world, not of India, to the citizens of the world. Here's a little story about JRD on his honeymoon trip in December 1930. At that time, the Bengal governor was Stanley Jackson, and I think the viceroy was Irwin. But Bengal was so strong in 1930 that this gentleman, Stanley Jackson, was as powerful as the viceroy. During the trip, his wife Thelma, Telly as he called her, and both of them were walking, but suddenly they had to stop because the governor was passing and the motorcade was to pass. In that cold winter, either morning or afternoon, whatever it was at that time, I don't recall the time. But while they were waiting, they had to wait for almost half an hour so that the car could pass and his motorcade could pass. Now it was cold and people were shivering, not only them, the two of them, but they were well clothed. But there were many, 400 or 500 people. So they decided to do something about it. And JRD said, as soon as you see the governor's car, you just walk as if you're crossing the road, and so that they stop. And that's what he did. That's what worked. And she stopped the car. And while the car was stopped, this is what JRD said to the governor. He said, stepping suddenly in front of Governor Sir Stanley Jackson, he shouted, "Who the hell do you think you are, keeping 500 women and children, men, women and children in the cold for an hour?" I couldn't see the last words after 100 because I have Amrita's box on the front of it. You're keeping 500 women and children in the cold for an hour. You damn fool. This is what he told the governor. So there was an Anglican priest waiting there, and this is what he said. He said, "Sir, I do not approve of your language, but I certainly approve of your sentiments." Commitment to the community. He was totally committed to the community, and I like to share something quickly about Tata Chemicals. If you know, for the first 16 years, this company did not produce a single rupee profit. And when he invited experts, all of them told him that, "Sir, you're doing the wrong thing at the wrong time in the wrong place." Which means what? You just close the business. You just don't do it. Yeah, when he heard that, JRD said, "That's not the first time we have done that." Because everybody doubted steel, everybody doubted other textiles, for example. So why not chemicals? Then he went on to explain why he wanted to stay in Mithapur. He said, I want to remain there because don't forget what happens to the community if you close down this factory. Community today expects a better standard of living through employment, a better standard of living through setting up of schools and colleges, a better life because of water supply, power supply, hospitals. And I can't disappoint that community. So he stood there and remained there for emotional reasons, for being of service to the community, not for profit. And today, thanks to that decision, Tata Chemicals is the second largest soda ash producer in the world. And so he called this the cycle of wealth. He said the wealth gathered by Jamsetji and his sons in half a century of industrial pioneering formed but a minute fraction of the amount by which they enriched the nation. The whole of that wealth is held in trust for the people and exclusively for their benefit. The cycle is thus complete. What came from the people has gone back to the people many times over. JRD Tata Trust, when he started his trust in 1944, he said he's starting this trust because he wants to ensure that he does not have too much money. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a chappal of his, a sandal in the archives in Pune, which must have snapped a couple of times. It has always been sent to the cobbler, the mochi, who has stitched it with, with that thread, which is used for leather, and sent back to JRD's house. He could have just thrown that chappal away. That was the simplicity of the man. Here is a picture of the population award, just in case I thought you might like to see, given to him by the United Nations. He and Nehru had a continuous argument. Nehru wanted more and more people, and he said, you are going to deplete the resources of the country if you don't think of population. Caring and leadership is the next attribute that I like to share with you about this great personality. He said, if I have any merit, it is in getting on with individuals according to their ways and characters. Their ways and characters. At times it involves suppressing oneself. I don't know why JRD had to suppress himself. It is painful but necessary. To be a leader, you have to lead human beings with affection. Please remember this word affection, ladies and gentlemen. There are leaders, and in all of you are leaders in some way or the other. Don't give this up. I learned this and turned around to companies without ever scolding anyone or sacking anyone. This is the training that I received from Mr. JRD Tata. So affection inspires people. Command only makes them do what you want them to do. So affection is something you shouldn't forget. This is an old man telling you, but I thought I'll as well use this opportunity to pass on a message. I want to quickly tell you an incident. I had finished my service with JRD's office and sat in a building next to Bombay House called Nanavati Mahalaya. And the phone rang. It was cricket. Once in 5 years, a team would come from abroad and play a test match in India. So we were playing the game at Kanpur. And there were no televisions, and all that we could have was a big transistor. I was playing it full blast. And the phone rang, so I was not interested. I said, who is this? I just dropped the phone. 2 seconds it rang again, so it was disturbing me because Kanpur was far more interesting, Green Park. And I again said, who is there? Rather rudely, and I dropped it. The third time it rang, I was really furious. I said, who the hell is that? JRD luckily did not hear the word hell. So he spelled out his name thinking that I could not understand who the person was on the other side. And he spelled out his name in the loudest voice he could muster. He said, this is JRD Tata. I said, good Lord, what have I done to the chairman? So he said, can you see me? Very politely. I said, of course I'll see you. I mean, I just ran down the place, ran up to his office, which I was used to entering. He looked at me and showed as if he didn't want me to say anything. I wanted to apologize, but he didn't want to listen to me at all. After a few minutes, which were like 50 years for me, when I constantly tapped my forehead out of fright, I don't know how many times I opened and closed my jacket button. He was having fun in his mind, and he didn't say anything. He looked as if he was very angry. He said, why don't you sit down? I did. Again, no, shall I say, signal that he would like me to say anything. And then he suddenly himself burst out laughing and he said, "Tell me, who is batting and what is the score?" Now, imagine, all that he could hear on the other side was a cricket commentary. And after that little fun that he put at me, all that he wanted to know, who is batting and what is the score. So I felt relieved. I told him what it was. And then he very politely asked me, "Do you think you will have time to do this for me today?" He wanted something. I said, "Sir, I'll do anything for you today. You just tell me what you would like." And that's why Ratan Tata says, "I admire successful people. If success has been achieved through too much ruthlessness, then I may admire that person, but I cannot respect it." So Jack Welch and his style is not our way of running companies, or at least in my view should not be. It is JRD and Ratan Tata's style of running companies. Here's a line from Kavi, the famous management guru. This is moral authority is more powerful than formal authority. This is what JRD exercises. Sorry. Fairness and equity. I have 15 minutes. I'll try to do as best as I can. As you know, in 1945, let me point out the people to you. Here is JRD Tata. Here is his wife, Thelma Tata, and that is Suman Mulgaonkar. He was our vice chairman in Tata Steel. I reported to him for 7 years in those days. And he is the father of Adityapur. Whatever Adityapur is today is really Mulgaonkar's vision. Now, in 1945, Mulgaonkar and JRD went to Munich. They wanted some collaboration, but the Nazis were totally finished. There was nobody there. And the Cross Mappe, Arun Maira has written a lovely piece about it. The directors of Cross Mappe who had come to receive them, they said, "Sir, what can we offer you? We don't have anything." Until one of them found a few of their engineers walking aimlessly, maybe 4 or 5 of them, on the platform. They had no means of livelihood. They didn't know where the next meal is going to come from. And they said, "If you can take these people to Jamshedpur, they're good. They might be able to help you make your boilers and whatever you want for your engineering workshop." Getting German engineers into India was difficult, but these two gentlemen managed to get them. And with their help, we produced in Telco at that time the first product, which was a road roller and a boiler for the locomotive. Mulgaonkar joined Telco in 1949 as a general manager. And he told Rusi Lala, who was writing a book on Tata Steel's 100 years, that, in those days, Telco had more general managers than it had locomotives. I still remember that line. Now, there was no agreement. You could not pay the Germans for what they had contributed. But after Germany started regrouping again, we were independent and nobody expected anything until Cross Mappe was suddenly surprised to receive a letter from JRD Tata offering to pay for the services rendered by those engineers. There was the question of a fee. We looked after them when they wanted to, but JRD felt that was the fair thing to do. There's another sequel to this, but I'll skip that. I want to tell you a little bit about a second-hand car that he wanted to buy. Except for a couple of years, I didn't like the choice that I had in my days, which was Ambassador or a Padmini. I didn't like this car. Only for a couple of years I owned a Padmini. I used to buy second-hand imported cars, or I used to go to Delhi, and when the embassies were auctioning their cars, I would bring them to Bombay. And JRD, who often came to Steel House, where we used to live, to drop his secretary, he would see me fiddling with the car. So he knew I liked the car. So I liked second-hand cars, and I understood about second-hand cars. So he said, "Get me a car." I don't know why he wanted it, maybe for something. So I, with a lot of research, study, checking many cars, I liked a Fiat 124, which later was copied as Premier 118NE, although not of the same class. So I brought that car, and I said, "Sir, would you like to see it?" He said, "Yes, let me see it." So we drove around for almost 15, 20 kilometers. The driver was not there. I was driving. And then when we dropped the parked the car. He said, yeah, it's a good car. Just tell him what price he wants and so on. So I negotiated very hard. He wanted 1,15,000 or 25,000, I forget what it was. And I brought him down to 1,05,000. So, and when JRD was traveling, he came back and I told him, sir, the car price I've settled, and this is what I've achieved. I felt I had negotiated very well, and it was 1,05,000 rupees. He wanted 1,20,000, something like that, or 25. He scolded me, reprimanded me. He said, that's not the way to negotiate. You have to look at being fair. Tell him, I'll give him 1,10,000 rupees. You can imagine the embarrassment I felt. I learned a lesson, but how do I now go and tell him I'm going to pay more than what I negotiated so hard for? Luckily, for some reason, JRD didn't buy that car, and I was saved the embarrassment. But fairness was a part of his personality. Humor. Let's look at a few quick instances of humor. In we don't have this company anymore. In 1917, created called Tomco, makers of the famous hammam soap. At an annual general meeting of this company in the 60s, shareholders who come to the podium are photographed. And here was a man who was not interested in the goodies, but he wanted a photograph, because then he could take the picture home and tell his wife, see, I am speaking and JRD Tata is answering. It was a great, shall I say, ego massage for him. Now he came to the podium, stood there, his photograph was taken, and he started going. So JRD stood up. He said, where are you going? You have to say something. So he said, sir, my wife is complaining that the quality of the hammam soap has deteriorated. He said, why, what's wrong with it? It's not having the fragrance that it had earlier. It comes sealed, you don't get a properly sealed packet. Does it become soggy in the shower? Doesn't retain its hardness? What is wrong? He said, sir, I don't know. My wife is complaining about the product, because he had just, without thinking, said something. So he said, no, but tell me what is wrong. He said, sir, I don't know this thing. He went on saying, I don't know. So JRD said, why doesn't your wife use some other products? If she doesn't like hammam, we have Moti, Jai, Breeze, other names of the soaps of this company. He said, I don't know why she doesn't want to use the other soap. She's only complaining that the soap is not good. It's no longer what it used to be. Now JRD realized that this man was all conquered. So he said, in that case, shall I give you some advice? He said, sir, please. Because he also wanted to run away. Meanwhile, he's photographed 30 times. And JRD said, my advice to you, gentlemen, is very simple. If your wife cannot change your soap, why don't you just change your wife? And in that laughter, everything disappeared. As you know, Bharat Ratna means jewel of India. And JRD one day, not one day, JRD used to go to the Jewel of India, which is a famous restaurant, not very far from where I live in Murli. And he used to take his sister, and Jewel of India is an Indian cuisine restaurant. JRD is a half French, as you know, because of his mother, continental food normally. But he used to go there once every month, and he would take his sisters to the Jewel of India. One day he invited Rusi Lala to the Jewel of India. Rusi had agreed to go with his wife and join him. Suddenly, Rusi had a guest from abroad, and he phoned JRD and said, sir, I have this lady who has come from the States, and I have to take her out. I'm sorry, I can't make it for lunch. He said, why don't you bring her to lunch also? Tell her that the Jewel of India has invited her to the Jewel of India. Rusi told me this story. Those who have done the course with me know about this, but for the others, it may be of interest. Nehru wanted to send mangoes to the Mountbattens, and he requested them to be taken in by Air India. And Nehru was worried. Nehru and JRD were friends, as were their fathers. And Nehru wrote to JRD saying that, I would request you to do this, but I'm worried about the weight. So here is a line in reply from JRD Tata to Nehru. It is in a letter of 13th April 1949. I've kept it in front of me because I would rather read the words that he used in replying that letter. He's telling Jawaharlal, please do not worry about the weight on your flight. as mangoes carried by the Prime Minister are of a very special kind, to which the laws of gravity do not apply and which therefore weigh nothing. I want to tell you another humorous story about tea forever. Mrs. Woods was the president of the World Bank from 1960 to 1961 to 66, sometime in the 60s. And his wife, Louis was her name, she was very fond of the tea that once JRD had presented to her. And she liked it so much that she wanted it to be ensured for the rest of her life. So I'm reading two paragraphs, one from her and one from JRD as a reply. She says, JRD was called J. Your tea has arrived as per schedule. Thank God. I do hope that you have left in your will that I am to continue to get that tea in case you die before I do. I do not think I can live without it now. That was her request to JRD that he should make a mention so that she gets her tea when she's no more. Now, here's a reply from JRD. He says, I'm glad that the tea arrived in time to save your life, now that you find you cannot live without it. I have considered your suggestion of making a provision in my will to ensure that you continue to receive the tea after my death. But as I do not expect anything to be left of my assets after paying taxes, I am making other arrangements to ensure continuity of supplies even while I am waiting for you on the other side. I only hope I only hope we will both go to the same place. He wasn't sure whether they would be meet in heaven or in hell. Perfection obsession. He was a man who was particular about every small thing. I have 7 minutes, so I will perhaps skip one or two, but let me tell you about Air India. Air India was Air India because of JRD. The Swiss calibrated their watches with the landing of Air India at Geneva. There were these two guys having coffee, and one of them asked the other, what time is it? The other fellow promptly said 1 p.m. He said, how did you say 1 p.m.? You didn't look at your wristwatch, there is no clock here. He said, did you not see the Air India land? Because Air India landed sharply at 1 p.m. every day. You can imagine what Air India was. After Government of India took it over, it landed at 1 p.m. but on the next day. Why was Air India what it was? He was particular about the smallest thing. He would go unannounced to an aircraft to inspect the aircraft. You know, we didn't have flaps. We didn't have flaps those days on windows. We had small curtains. And if he did not move, he would call for a small oil can, drop put a drop of oil on the channels, make them move smoothly himself. People who travel from abroad, when they don't know where to throw the chewing gum, they stick it under the chair. And JRD would inspect, imagine, 300 chairs or plus of jumbo, and if he found the chewing gum stuck there, he would remove it with his bare hands. So Air India had to be an outstanding airline. When Singapore Airlines started their airlines, they benchmarked their services with Air India. From a third world country, it was one of the top 2 airlines of the world of its time. And when JRD was chairman, he was very, very particular. So the incident I want to tell you is about what a friend once told me. He said JRD was there for inspection. He was a purser in the aircraft, and he was missing. So he found a little light filtering out of the toilet door. He thought maybe JRD is inspecting the toilet. So he opened the door and he found JRD Tata bent on the commode doing something, having so much toilet paper in his hand. So he said, sir, what are you doing? He said, can you not see? Some of our Indian guests do not know how to use Western facilities. So I'm cleaning the toilet. He said, give it to me, I'll clean the toilet. He said, why can I not clean the toilet? Is this not my airline? Can you imagine what Air India should be if the chairman is like that? Of course, he was persuaded and asked to go, and everybody felt embarrassed. So imagine everybody in Air India had to be a mini JRD to satisfy JRD. Searching for a spanner, he had a workshop in his house, and he had something like lathes and other chota machines, and he had something like 100 spanners. While he was doing some work, a friend who I was visiting him, he asked him, he said, "Sir, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm repairing this." And he was under some equipment. He said, he told his friend, "Can you give me that particular spanner? Maybe 7 by 12. I don't know what size the spanner was." So he said, "You have got 300 spanners. Where do I look for it?" He said, "Third line from the top, fourth spanner from the left." He knew exactly where each spanner was kept. I'll skip this because this is a slightly longish story. Typo error in a board note. JRD Tata used a turquoise blue ink. The board note for every board meeting would first have to be approved by him for all companies. One day, somehow it slipped my table and Sabawala's table, and the board note went to him. I don't remember if it was a Tata Steel board note or some other board note. Next morning, a word which was a common word, very ordinary, I should have kept that paper actually, which was used about 11 times in the note, came out with 11 circles bubbling that particular word. And on the top, it only said, "Surely only one of the spellings is right." A typo could not escape his attention. So he was that particular. He taught us how to staple papers. It had to be at a slant on the left corner at the top so that it is easy for someone to open it. When we punch a paper to put it in the file, we don't really care. But what he would do, I've seen him, he would pick up the papers which he wanted to file himself in his personal folder. He would pick them up, tap them vertically, horizontally, make sure that they were exactly like a bundle of crisp new notes, fold it in the middle slightly, put it exactly where that punch arrow is, as you know, in the small punch, and then punch the holes and gracefully put it into his folder, a black leather folder. I still remember. Since I have 5 minutes, let me tell you the board note, which I said I will not tell you the scribbled note from a colleague. A note had come from JRD Tata, from somebody. I don't want to mention his name. He was a very senior person. The note came to JRD. He had written all over the place, wherever he could find space, and putting arrows, taking one point to the other, then PTO. So if you turn back again, scribble, very, very clumsy note. Of course, with difficulty you could understand. So when they met and they took a call, and he left, I was asked to request him to come back, which I did. He said, "Why did you have to do this? Why could you not take another piece of paper, write your comments clearly, and then we could have discussed it?" Now, that man was of equal stature. He said, "Jay, why are you wasting my time? What difference does it make to you? I have done what I had to. You have seen it. We have discussed it. Now, what the hell are you bothered about being so particular where I should write, how neatly it should be presented? You're wasting my time." He said, "I'm not wasting your time. You don't know what's going to happen to this note." He said, "What's going to happen to this note?" He said, "This note will now go to the filing department." So he said, "So what?" He said, "Now the lady there will punch 2 holes into that note. 6 of your words will be distorted and will disappear. How inconvenient it is going to be for someone 5 years later down the road when so much more paper will sit on this note to understand what we were trying to say and what we have done today." He was looking at the inconvenience of the readability of a paper which 2 senior-most men in the Tata Group had signed. Just imagine. That is how it made him JRD Tata. Perfection was what he pursued. His friends called him the finicky Frenchman because his mother was French, and he was so meticulous about everything that they called him the finicky Frenchman. JRD himself knew that he was too finicky, and this is what he had to say. He says, "I know that aiming at perfection has its drawbacks. It makes you go into details you can avoid. It takes a lot of energy, but that is the only way you can achieve excellence. So in that sense, being finicky is essential." This quote, which I'm sure all of you know, "One must forever strive for excellence or even perfection in any task, however small, and never be satisfied with the second best. Chalta hai, giving priority only to A items, he gave the same priority to a Z item that he gave to an A. It had to be thorough. Fortunately, I was a crazy Parsi too, and I got along well with him because that's how I was made myself. The last slide I like to share with you. Here is July 29 is forever. As I said, such men do not need physical presence. They continue to inspire us. They are there all around us, watching over us. All that you have to smell today is the 116 yellow roses. And when you inhale that fragrance, think of the man who was perhaps the finest blossom that humanity had grown in its time. And we need to pay our respects to a personality of like JRD Tata. As I said, I'll go back to leadership. A leader has not to be seen, he has to be felt. And JRD lives in our hearts even today. You know, when in Marathi somebody is leaving a place, they say, Vetuya, which is we'll meet again. When it comes to English, we'll see you soon. That's what we say. When we say bye to somebody, we say see you soon. If it is in Hindi, we'll say phir milenge when somebody is leaving. In Gujarati, we say something, and that was the banner on the day that he passed away in November 1993 of Nana Chudasama. Next to it is a well-known banner. Anybody passing that way sees it. It's very topical and very perfect. But that day the banner said, and I'm sharing what we say in Gujarati, it says, Aujo JRD, means come again, JRD. So JRD is still very much with us. Ladies and gentlemen, once again grateful to all of you, to Sudhanshu for his introduction, to Kulwin, to Amrita, to my friend Vipin for organizing this for a non-e-savvy person like me. It's been a pleasure being with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I would now like to request Chief Corporate Communication India and Southeast Asia, Mr. Kulwin Suri, to please give the vote of thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Amrita. I'm audible, I hope.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, I've had the pleasure of listening to Mr. Doongaji several times, and each time I've come out inspired, and it was really no different today. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Kulwin. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. JRD was indeed an inspirational personality and will remain so for generations to come. An absolute legend in simplicity and principled work ethic and lifestyle. Once again, thank you very much, Ms. Doongaji, for sharing your thoughts and a wonderful presentation. You have been very kind. You have been very kind in having accepted our invitation. Wish you good health and the very best.
Thank you very much, Kulwin. It's my family, it's my company, so I can do anything, anytime for Tata Steel.
Thank you, sir. I would like to thank Mr. Sudhanshu Pathak as well, our Vice President Manufacturing, for his presence and introducing the session. Thank you very much, sir. A big thank you to all my colleagues who joined the session today. Thank you very much for taking time to join in. We had close to 300 colleagues who joined in today. Finally, thank you to my colleagues in IT, particularly Vipin Chand, and my colleagues in corporate communication for having enabled this session. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a wonderful day. Cheers. Thanks once again.
God bless.
Thank you, sir.
Now, yeah.
Thank you.